By sunrise, 100 motorcycles ringed the diner in silence. "We're here for breakfast." And receipts. Then invoice after invoice was laid across the counter, each carrying the same hidden code. June reached into her apron as her manager whispered, "Give me that yellow copy." "Step through that door, June, and you will not have a shift tomorrow," Gavin Pruitt said as a ceramic mug slipped from her tray and shattered across the tile. Her breath caught once, sharp and shallow, while the diner's wall clock clicked to 11:47 p.m. Beyond the glass, an older biker bent over a dead cruiser, rain streaming from his black leather jacket and silver beard. June opened the door. Cold air rushed inside, carrying wet asphalt, engine oil, and a metallic bite of mountain rain. Gavin reached past her and twisted the lock halfway, forcing the door against her shoulder. "He already refused the tow," he said. "That makes him someone else's problem." Outside, the biker pressed one scarred hand against the motorcycle seat and tried to steady his breathing. He was shaking. June looked down at the folded notice inside her apron pocket, the one stamped with a balance of $486 and a deadline of noon. Beneath, it was a single $20 bill, softened at the corners from being counted too many times. That was the last $20 she could actually reach before payday. Gavin lowered his voice as two Aldercrest guests watched from Booth 6. Summit Lantern was the resort's roadside concession, and he controlled its overnight operation. "You have 3 seconds to come back behind this counter." June smelled scorched coffee, lemon disinfectant, and a last slice of cherry pie warming beneath the heat lamp. She thought about the quarter tank in her car, the 6 miles back to her rented room, and the empty shelf where breakfast should have been. Then she looked at the man in the rain. "1," Gavin said. June tore a blank order slip from her pad and wrote the directions to the resort's maintenance shed, 1.8 miles farther up the pass. She folded the paper around the 20, pressed it beneath her thumb, and stepped fully outside. Behind her, the lock snapped shut. Everett, Rivet, Callahan raised his head when she approached. A pale scar ran from his jaw toward his left ear, and rain had darkened his leather vest almost black. "I'm not asking for money," he said, his voice rough but controlled. "Good," June replied, "because I am not offering charity." She held out the folded order slip. Everett did not take it. "That diner manager already called a tow company," he said. "They wanted $312 before touching the bike, plus another $89 for something called Mountain Priority Access." He lifted a pink carbon copy from his glove. The numbers did not smell right. June glanced through the glass. Gavin was no longer watching Everett. He was staring at the paper in the biker's hand. That changed something. June pushed the folded 20 into Everett's cold fingers. "The maintenance shed has tools, coffee, and an old service phone. Show them this note." Everett looked at the money, then at her thin uniform cardigan already darkening with rain. "You need this more than I do." "Maybe," she said, "but you need it first." For 3 seconds, neither of them moved. Rain tapped against the diner sign, steady as fingertips on glass. Everett finally closed his hand around the note. "How do I pay you back?" June turned toward the locked door and the man waiting behind it. "Help the next person who gets stranded." Gavin opened the door just wide enough for her to enter. His face remained calm, but his fingers tightened around the brass key. "Finish this shift," he said. "Then do not expect another one." June walked past him, leaving small rain marks across the spotless floor. At the counter, a yellow carbon slip lay crumpled beside the trash bin. The printed time read 11:39 p.m. A handwritten code sat beneath the tow fee. "Semino seitsetest." Gavin saw her reading it. Then he kicked the paper into the bin. Gavin turned away first. He adjusted the knot of his silver tie, wiped one invisible speck from the chrome counter, and told June to clear the broken mug before a resort guest complained. She knelt beside the white shards. Above her, the pendant lights glowed warm over polished tables, untouched pie stands, folded linen napkins, and a row of cream-colored coffee cups arranged with military precision, while rainwater from her shoes spread into 2 dark pools that looked almost black against the spotless tile. "Table 6 needs fresh coffee," Gavin said. June gathered the ceramic pieces into her palm. A sharp edge pressed against her skin. She did not flinch. The guests in Booth 6 wore matching Aldercrest conference badges and smelled faintly of cedar cologne, peppermint tea, and the expensive hand lotion placed in every resort bathroom. One of them glanced toward the door. "Was that man bothering you?" he asked. "His motorcycle broke down," June said. "That was not the question," Gavin replied from behind her. He smiled at the guests. Then he removed table 6 from June's section. At 12:06 a.m., he transferred booth 3 as well. At 12:14, he took the two-top near the fireplace. By 12:20, June was left with only the counter stools, where no customer had sat for 43 minutes. She watched Gavin enter each change into the scheduling tablet. The screen shone blue against his clean fingertips. "You cannot remove every table," she said. "I can assign service where it protects the business." "You mean where it protects your tips?" Gavin looked up. His expression stayed smooth. "I mean where customers do not have to watch an employee bring mountain mud across a premium dining room." June smelled bleach under the sweeter scent of maple syrup. The floor machine hummed near the kitchen door. Outside, the wind drove a sheet of rain against the windows, briefly erasing the road, the parking lot, and every trace of Everett's motorcycle. A younger server named Holly Mercer approached with a stack of warm plates against her forearm. At 28, Holly had already learned to speak carefully whenever Gavin stood nearby. "June," she murmured, "check next week's board." The schedule hung inside a glass frame beside the office. June's name had been crossed out from 4 shifts. 32 hours vanished beneath one stroke of black marker. Gavin appeared behind her reflection. Those hours were never guaranteed. June stared at the empty spaces. Rent was $486 overdue. Her car held less than 1/4 tank. The $20 that could have carried her through 2 days was now climbing the pass in the hand of a stranger. "Give me my tips from tonight," she said. Gavin opened the register and removed a narrow envelope marked J. He weighed it once in his palm. $27.60. He did not hand it over. "There is a replacement fee for the mug, a sanitation charge for the wet floor, and a conduct adjustment for leaving your station. Those are not diner policies. They are management decisions." Holly froze near the kitchen window. The cook stopped scraping the grill. For 1 second, the only sound was bacon fat snapping beneath the exhaust hood. Gavin returned the bills and coins to the register, then dropped June's empty tip envelope into the trash. June looked at the bin. The crumpled yellow carbon copy was still visible beneath it, one corner stained with coffee. "You should be more careful about what you pick up," Gavin said quietly. June reached for a clean cloth, bent as though wiping the floor, and closed her fingers around the paper. The carbon sheet felt damp and thin. She folded it twice and slipped it behind the rent notice in her apron before standing. Gavin's eyes followed the movement. "Did you take something from that bin?" "A broken sugar packet." "Show me." June held up her empty hand. The diner remained bright and warm around them, every spoon aligned, every glass shining, every surface designed to suggest order and safety, while beyond the windows the mountain had disappeared into darkness, and a man in a soaked leather jacket was pushing a dead machine toward a shed 1.8 miles away. Gavin stepped closer. His aftershave smelled like pine and cold metal. "There is one approved tow company on this road," he said. "People who ignore that arrangement create problems." "For whom?" June asked. Gavin's smile thinned. "For themselves." At 12:31 a.m., he walked into the office and locked the door. June waited until the blinds closed. Then she unfolded the yellow slip beneath the counterlight. The printed charge was $312. The handwritten surcharge was $89. Beneath both, in smaller ink, were the code SL-17 and a notation she had not seen before, R-18. Everett pushed the cruiser uphill with both hands locked around the handlebars, his boots slipping on wet gravel, his breath leaving him in short white bursts. The temporary road lights from Alder Crest glowed above the trees like a second, cleaner world, their amber pools touching stone walls, heated walkways, and polished brass signs, while the shoulder beneath him remained black with runoff and engine oil. At 12:38 a.m., with less than half a mile remaining, He stopped beside mile marker 17, pressed his forearm against the seat, and waited for the cramp in his shoulder to ease. The motorcycle leaned heavily toward the ditch. He caught it. Rain had worked through the seams of his jacket and into the shirt beneath, but the folded order slip in his inner pocket remained dry beneath his palm. He could feel the square shape of June's $20 bill inside it. He had not met many people who gave away their last piece of safety without first asking whether the stranger deserved it. The maintenance shed appeared at 1254, a low concrete building behind the resort's spotless laundry wing, where white electric carts sat charging beneath a roof and warm air carried the scent of detergent, cedar soap, and steamed linen. Everett stood at the edge of that brightness with mud to his knees and grease across his knuckles. He looked like something the resort had paid to keep outside. A white-haired maintenance worker named Dale Corbett opened the side door, but left the chain fastened. "Facility is closed until 6, he said. Everett held up the order slip. A waitress down the road said you might have a service phone and a length of cable. Dale glanced at the biker's scar, the dead cruiser, and the wet leather vest. His eyes hardened. Then he read June's handwriting. Use this to get off the mountain. Dale removed the chain. Inside, the shed was warmer than the diner had been. Tools hung in outlined spaces on a gray wall. Every wrench matched to a painted silhouette, while Everett's gloves left dark water on the clean workbench. Dale poured coffee from a dented steel pot, tasted it, and made a face. Burned 3 hours ago. Still hot, Everett said. He drank it anyway. The coffee tasted bitter, metallic, and faintly of smoke, but warmth reached his fingers after the second swallow. Dale inspected the bike beneath a fluorescent strip, found the cracked regulator connector, and cut a temporary bridge from 12-gauge cable. It was not a proper repair. It was enough. At 1:17 a.m., the cruiser coughed once, then settled into a low, uneven idle that shook drops of water from the exhaust. Everett took out the 20. Dale pushed his hand away. The woman already vouched for you. She gave me her last 20. Then keep it for the road. Everett returned the bill to the order slip and slid both into the inside pocket of his jacket. The pink carbon copy from the tow driver had softened at the edges, but the printed numbers remained sharp beneath the shed light. $312 base service, $89 mountain priority access, referral code G.P-17. Beneath the fee, nearly hidden by a grease thumbprint, sat the same internal notation, R18. Everett's face changed. Dale noticed. You know that code? Everett did not answer immediately. He wiped the pink sheet dry, laid it flat on the workbench, and photographed it beneath the brightest lamp. Over the previous 6 months, riders from 3 counties had posted similar charges in a private message thread: stranded batteries, damaged belts, flat tires, frozen fuel lines. Different nights. Same surcharge. Same stretch of road. No one had ever kept both halves of the paper trail. Everett stepped outside with the phone raised until one bar appeared near the laundry vent. He opened the group thread and searched the letters GP. 7 images surfaced. Then 11. Then 23. The same code set on all of them. At 1:26 a.m., Everett called Mason Doyle, a 68-year-old former contract auditor who rarely answered after midnight. Mason answered on the 4th ring. Rivet, pull every roadside invoice from Aldercrest Pass. How many riders? All of them. Wind pushed rain beneath the shed roof. Everett looked down the slope toward the tiny diner, its white windows glowing in the darkness like a glass box sealed against the mountain. Do we ride? Mason asked. At first light. How many? Everett watched Dale tighten the temporary cable and listen to the cruiser idle. Everyone who has a receipt. Mason went quiet. And what are the rules? Everett placed one hand over June's folded 20. No srets. No touching anyone. No one speaks unless asked directly. Then why bring 100 motorcycles? Everett looked at the pink carbon copy. Because one sheet of paper can be dismissed. He took a slow breath. 100 people standing behind the same record cannot. By 2:03 a.m., June's 4 missing shifts had become 6. Gavin stood beneath the framed photograph of Aldercrest's marble lobby, drew 2 more black lines through her name, and capped the marker with a clean plastic click. Behind him, the diner glowed with polished chrome, amber pendant lights, and rows of untouched white cups while the storm pressed dirty water against the windows like something trying to get inside. "You are making this personal," June said. Gavin straightened the schedule. "You made it expensive." Her phone vibrated inside her apron at 2:11. The message from her landlord contained 9 words. "Payment by noon," or "I file the notice today." June read it twice, tasted stale coffee on her tongue, and turned the screen face down. Noon was less than 10 hours away. She had no tips, no 20, no shifts. Gavin passed behind her carrying a tray of warm cinnamon rolls toward 3 resort guests in press sweaters. Butter and brown sugar filled the air, rich enough to make June's empty stomach tighten, while the kitchen's stainless steel shelves reflected her damp uniform and tired face in thin, distorted strips. One guest near the fireplace lifted a napkin to her nose. "There is still an oil smell by the entrance," she said. Gavin looked directly at June. "She will take care of it." June scrubbed the same 2 tiles for 11 minutes. The floor was already clean, but Gavin made her replace the water twice, then add another capful of lemon disinfectant until the chemical sting covered the faint trace of Everett's gloves. Outside, the rain weakened to mist. Inside, everything smelled manufactured. At 3:04, Gavin called June into the narrow space beside the office door. He closed the kitchen blinds, lowered his voice, and held out his hand. "Give me the yellow copy." June kept both hands around the mop handle. "I do not have it." You reached into the trash. "For a sugar packet." Gavin watched her apron pocket. His smile remained calm, but a pulse moved beneath his jaw. "That paper belongs to the diner." "Then why did you throw it away?" For 1 second, his expression emptied. Then he stepped closer. "Because incomplete records confuse people who do not understand contracts." June could smell pine aftershave, fresh paper, and the faint, bitter trace of coffee on his breath. Behind him, the diner looked almost ceremonial. Silverware aligned, pie slices cut into exact triangles, white blinds hiding the black mountain beyond the glass. Nothing appeared wrong. That was the point. Gavin opened the office door and nodded toward a small metal shredder beside his desk. "Bring me the copy before sunrise, and I may restore 1 shift. 1, 2, if you stop asking questions." June looked at the shredder. A narrow ribbon of yellow paper clung to its teeth. She imagined feeding the carbon slip through, watching G.P-17 disappear first, then the 18% notation, then the proof that Gavin had looked afraid when Everett held the matching pink copy. 1 sheet, 1 choice. Holly found June near the coffee station at 4:16, glanced once toward the unopened napkin boxes, and lowered her voice. "He searched my locker last month," Holly whispered. "Said he was checking for missing receipts." June looked at her. Holly's hands trembled around a stack of saucers. "Did he find any?" June asked. Holly swallowed. "No, because he had already made me tear them up." Gavin emerged from the office before she could say more. Holly moved away. June unfolded the yellow copy once, then twice. The paper had softened from heat and moisture, and the carbon ink stained the pad of her thumb blue. She could tear it down the middle. She could still choose safety. At 5:37, she carried it toward the restroom, locked herself inside, and held the sheet above the metal waste bin. Her landlord's message glowed on her phone. "Payment by noon." She folded the paper again instead. When she returned, Gavin was standing at the front window. The sky beyond him had faded from black to charcoal, and the diner's warm reflection floated over the empty road like a perfect room suspended in darkness. At 5:52, a low-engine note rolled through the glass. Gavin stopped breathing. A second engine answered from farther down the pass. Then a third. At 5:53 a.m., the first motorcycle emerged from the fog with one headlight cutting across the wet road, followed by 2 more riding in a tight line behind it. Their engines rolled against the diner windows, deep enough to tremble the silverware beside the sugar jars, while Gavin's hand remained frozen above the front door lock. June watched 3 black cruisers turn into the parking lot and stop beneath the white neon sign. Then 6 more appeared. The riders wore rain-darkened leather, scarred boots, and old helmets beaded with mist, their machines carrying streaks of mud from the lower pass. They parked without revving, shut off their engines, and placed both feet on the pavement as carefully as guests arriving outside a church. No one approached the door. At 5:57, 12 motorcycles occupied the front row. At 5:59, another group entered from the eastern bend, their headlights sweeping across the diner's spotless walls, the framed mountain prints, and a glass display where 6 slices of cherry pie sat beneath warm bulbs. By 6:02, the parking lot held 37 machines. Gavin turned the lock. "Holly, call resort security." Holly stood beside the coffee urn with a clean white towel folded over one arm. "What do I tell them?" "Tell them we are being surrounded." June looked through the glass. The bikers were not surrounding anything. They were arranging their motorcycles in straight rows, leaving the service lane open and keeping the fuel pumps clear, while rainwater ran from their jackets onto the dark pavement. Still, the sight of them made the diner feel suddenly fragile. Inside, the air smelled of cinnamon glaze, lemon cleaner, and freshly ground coffee. Outside, leather, exhaust, wet wool, and cold iron gathered beneath the whitening sky. Gavin pulled the blinds halfway down. "Turn off the front lights," he ordered. "We are open 24 hours, June said. "Not to them." At 6:05, the diner sign went dark, but the interior remained bright enough to expose every frightened face behind the glass. The resort guests left their booths and moved toward the kitchen corridor, carrying leather bags and untouched coffee. One man whispered that the riders must be there for the biker Gavin had turned away. Another said June had invited them. Gavin heard that. He looked at her. "What did you tell him?" "Directions to the maintenance shed." "And what else?" "Nothing." The next wave arrived before he could answer. 20 motorcycles entered from the west, then 18 from the east. Then smaller groups came through the fog, 2 at a time, 5 at a time, their headlights disappearing as each engine stopped. At 6:11, Holly counted 84. At 6:14, 99 motorcycles stood around the diner, their chrome dulled by rain, their riders motionless beneath the pale blue edge of dawn. The silence after the last engine died felt heavier than the noise. Gavin lifted the diner phone and called Aldercrest security. He used the words intimidation, blockade, and immediate danger. At 6:16, security called back. Exterior cameras showed open lanes, no forced entry, and no immediate threat, so the complaint had been escalated to Aldercrest operations. June watched a biker at the far edge of the lot step aside so a delivery van could pass. Another moved his cruiser 6 inches to keep the handicapped space clear. No one touched the building. No one shouted. At 6:17, the 100th motorcycle entered the lot, Everett riding the repaired cruiser at its head. The temporary cable beneath the seat was wrapped in gray tape, and the engine stumbled once before settling into its uneven idle. He wore the same black leather jacket, but his posture had changed. The man who had pushed a dead motorcycle through the rain now led the final machine into formation. June felt relief first. Then fear followed it. Everett parked directly opposite the diner entrance. He removed his helmet, revealing the pale scar beneath his jaw, and looked through the glass until he found her. June pressed one hand against the yellow carbon copy hidden inside her apron. Gavin stepped in front of her. "You brought this here," he said. "I gave one man $20, and he brought 100 men." Outside, Everett raised the pink carbon slip between 2 fingers. Gavin's face lost color. He ordered June into the kitchen, but she did not move. Everett walked toward the diner alone, his boots crossing the wet pavement at an unhurried pace while the other bikers remained beside their machines. He stopped 3 feet from the door. Gavin did not unlock it. Everett looked past him to June and held the pink paper against the glass so she could see the printed time, the handwritten surcharge, and the code G.P-17. "Go away," Gavin called through the door. Everett's expression did not change. "We have called security." Everett nodded once. Then he glanced toward the 100 riders standing silently beneath the cold morning sky. "That is fine," he said. "They may want copies." Gavin tightened his grip on the key. "What do you want?" Everett folded the pink receipt returned it to his jacket, and looked at the glowing coffee urn behind the counter. "We're here for breakfast," he said. Then his eyes settled on Gavin. "And receipts." At 6:21 a.m., Gavin finally turned the key, but he opened the door only wide enough for Everett to enter. Cold mist followed the biker across the threshold, carrying the smell of wet leather, old exhaust, and mountain air into a room scented with cinnamon glaze and polished wood. Everett removed his gloves, placed them neatly beside the register, and chose the first stool at the counter. "Coffee," he said. June reached for a white cup. Gavin stepped between them. "We are not serving your group." Everett placed $3 beneath the sugar dispenser. "I ordered for myself." The coffee machine released a soft hiss. June filled the cup, watching steam rise between Everett's scarred face and Gavin's silver tie. Outside, 99 bikers remained beside their motorcycles, motionless beneath the sky turning from gray to pale blue. Everett tasted the coffee. "Fresh," he said. "6 minutes old," June replied. Gavin kept one hand near the diner phone. "Drink it and leave." Everett drew the pink carbon slip from his jacket and laid it beside the $3. The paper looked small on the spotless counter. Then the door opened. Mason Harth Doyle entered alone, a tall white biker with a weathered face, a narrow scar above one eyebrow, and a brown envelope tucked beneath his arm. He ordered tea, paid an exact change, and placed an old roadside invoice beside Everett's slip. Same surcharge, same code. Mason sat 2 stools away. He said nothing. At 6:24, a third biker entered. He ordered toast. His receipt showed G.P-17. At 6:26, 2 more came through the door, one requesting black coffee, the other single egg. They paid before sitting, wiped their boots on the mat, and left 2 more invoices on the counter. After placing their orders, each rider returned outside, leaving no more than 6 bikers inside at a time. No one raised his voice. The diner slowly filled with men whose leather jackets carried rain, road dust, and the faint smell of machine oil, while the resort guests watched from behind immaculate cups and folded napkins. White porcelain surrounded scarred hands. Gavin tried to collect the papers. Everett covered the nearest invoice with 2 fingers. "That belongs to the customer." "Then keep it off my counter." "The counter is where customers place receipts." Another biker entered, then another. Each ordered something inexpensive, paid for it, and added a document to the growing line. By 6:31, 17 invoices stretched from the register to the pie case. Some were creased. Some were stained with fuel. One carried a faded coffee ring. Every one listed Mountain Priority Access. Gavin turned to Holly. "Clear those away." Holly lifted a tray, but did not move. "They're customer property," June said. Gavin looked at her apron. "You are not part of this conversation. You made me part of it at 11:39. His eyes sharpened. "Ever heard the time? That is when the yellow copy printed." Gavin's voice remained controlled. "There is no yellow copy." June felt the folded sheet against the rent notice in her pocket. She did not reach for it yet. At 6:34, Mason opened the brown envelope and removed photographs of invoices from 23 different nights. He arranged them by date, leaving the diner's polished surface covered in crooked evidence. Gavin pointed toward the door. "This is coordinated intimidation." Everett took another sip. "Everyone here ordered breakfast. You surrounded my building. The fire lane is open. The delivery lane is open. No one has blocked the road." Outside, a white resort shuttle passed between the rows of motorcycles without slowing. One biker stepped back to give it more room. Gavin watched through the window as his argument disappeared uphill. The door opened again. A broad-shouldered rider placed a receipt beside Mason's photographs and ordered cherry pie. June cut the slice beneath the warm display light. The warm cherry filling smelled sweet enough to feel almost cheerful, while the paper beneath. Her hand showed a $94 surcharge for a 6-mile tow. At 6:37, 28 invoices covered the counter. At 6:39, there were 34. The code G.P-17 appeared on every one. Gavin's comm began to crack at the edges. He told June to enter the office. She stayed beside the coffee urn. He lowered his voice. Give me what you took, and I will restore 2 shifts. Holly stopped pouring water. Everett looked at June, but he did not ask her for anything. Gavin extended his hand. Now, June reached in her apron. She removed the folded yellow carbon slip and held it above the counter. Gavin moved first. Everett did not touch him. Mason did not stand. None of the bikers outside stepped forward. June unfolded the paper herself and placed it beside Everett's pink copy. The printed times matched. The transaction numbers matched. The handwritten code matched. For the first time that morning, the diner became completely silent. Holly leaned closer. Then she whispered, "He made us destroy the others." Holly's confession seemed to alter the temperature of the room. The coffee urns still hissed, the pie warmers still glowed, and morning light still spread across the polished tables. But Gavin's authority no longer fit the clean space around him. "She is confused," he said. Holly set down the water pitcher. "I am not." At 6:42 a.m., Mason opened a second envelope and removed a sheet arranged in 3 columns: dates, transaction numbers, and roadside charges. Everett slid the yellow and pink carbon copies beneath the final entry. The entries established the same repeating pattern across the disputed transaction range. Gavin stared at the page, then reached for the diner phone. "I'm calling the county." "Please do," Mason said. "Ask them to send someone from civil licensing." The words stopped Gavin's hand. Mason removed Aldercrest's publicly issued roadside rate sheet and vendor standards, highlighting the bans on undisclosed referral fees and forced use of a single provider. Approved operators could charge published rates. They could not impose undisclosed referral fees. They could not require stranded travelers to use one provider. "That document does not concern this diner," Gavin said. On her tablet, the operations director opened the signed vendor agreement. Summit Lantern appeared under participating facilities beside Gavin Pruitt's September 3rd signature. The signature looked elegant. The terms did not. June watched the resort guests return slowly from the kitchen corridor. They stood near the booths with their expensive coats folded over their arms, looking past scarred bikers and oil-stained receipts toward the manager in the silver tie. Outside, 100 motorcycles remained silent in ordered rows. Inside, the room smelled of hot syrup and fear. Everett tapped the handwritten 18% notation. 34 riders had now produced records, 23 from the original thread and 11 located after Mason's call, he said. Different nights, different mechanical problems. Same surcharge, same referral code. Gavin recovered enough to smile. "Then your complaint is with the tow company." Mason placed an emailed remittance stub beside the invoices. Ridgeline had mistakenly attached it to one rider's receipt, and it listed an 18% facility rebate to GP Hospitality Services. Gavin's smile disappeared. "That account pays vendor expenses." "Which vendor?" Everett asked. Gavin looked toward the office. "I do not discuss business records with customers. You discuss them when you charge customers." At 6:47, Holly stepped behind the counter and removed a small spiral notebook from beneath the clean linen shelf. She opened it beside the register. Dates and vehicle descriptions filled the pages in her narrow handwriting. Besides, several entries were Gavin's instructions. "Call Ridgeline only, add priority fee, destroy yellow copy." "He made us log every stranded traveler," she said. Then he took the pages at the end of each month. Gavin pointed at her. "That notebook is stolen property." Holly's hand shook. She did not close it. June looked through the window at the bikers standing in cold mist, their jackets dark and rough against the resort's white shuttle buses and stone landscaping. They had enough physical presence to frighten anyone in the room, yet not one of them moved toward Gavin. Every threat existed only in his imagination. Every fact sat on the counter. Gavin seized on that difference. "This is coercion," he said. 100 men outside while you demand access to private records." Everett lifted his cup and drank the last of his coffee. "No one has demanded access." Mason pointed toward the ceiling camera above the register. "It has recorded every arrival, every open exit, and every movement in this room." Gavin looked up. The tiny red light blinked. It has recorded every customer paying, every exit remaining clear, and every rider following diner rules. The staff and resort guests can account for the words spoken here, Mason continued. You may call this pressure. You cannot call it violence. Gavin's eyes moved from the camera to the receipts, from the receipts to the yellow copy, and from the yellow copy to June. You think that paper protects you? He asked her. June felt the rent notice behind it in her apron, thin enough to tear with 2 fingers. No, she said. It protects the truth. At 6:51, Mason placed 3 sealed envelopes beside the register. One was addressed to Aldercrest Operations, one to the payment processor listed on the transfer records, one to the county licensing office. Gavin read each label. His face became still. You mailed copies? Everett shook his head. Not yet. Headlights appeared on the road beyond the motorcycles. A black Aldercrest utility vehicle turned into the lot and stopped beside the diner entrance. The woman who stepped out wore a Navy operations coat and carried a tablet already displaying photographs of the carbon slips. Gavin whispered, Who contacted her? Everett folded his gloves beside the empty coffee cup. Mason sent her the compiled file at 3:12 and called Aldercrest's overnight operations line. The operations director entered at 6:54 a.m. without looking at the motorcycles. She wiped 1 drop of rain from her navy sleeve, set her tablet beside the pie case, and asked Gavin for the complete roadside referral ledger. The room smelled of fresh coffee, cherry filling, and wet leather. Gavin smiled. There is no ledger. The room held still. Beyond the windows, 100 bikers stood beneath the clean blue light of morning, their dark jackets streaked with road mud against Aldercrest's pale stone walls, trimmed hedges, and white electric shuttles. Inside, the chrome counter reflected 34 stained invoices, 2 matching carbon slips, and 3 sealed envelopes. The operations director enlarged a photograph on her tablet. This transaction is numbered 6841. She swiped once. This one is 6,867. Another swipe. And Mr. Callahan's is 6894. Gavin adjusted his silver tie. The towing company creates those numbers. Mason opened the vendor agreement to the record retention clause. Participating facilities assign the referral sequence. The operations director read the paragraph herself. Her fingers stopped beside Gavin's signature. At 6:56, the coffee machine clicked off. The silence sharpened. Where are the record from 6841 through 6,894? She asked. Misplaced. 54 transactions. Night staff handled them. Holly lowered the clean towel from her arm. He kept the book in his office. Gavin turned toward her so quickly that his key ring struck the counter. You have said enough. Not yet, June said. Gavin looked at the ceiling camera, the resort guests, the rows of bikers outside, and the evidence arranged beneath the warm pendant lights. Then he walked toward the office. Everett remained seated. Mason did not rise. No biker stepped into Gavin's path. That absence unsettled him more than resistance would have. He reached the office door at 6:58 and placed the brass key into the lock. Mr. Pruitt, the operations director, said, Do not alter, remove, or destroy any business record. Gavin kept his back to her. I am retrieving the file you requested. Then leave the door open. He turned the key. The office beyond looked small and dim compared with the immaculate dining room. Cardboard boxes crowded the floor. Loose receipts leaned beside the shredder. A narrow strip of yellow carbon paper remained caught between its teeth. Gavin stepped inside and reached toward the lower filing cabinet. The operations director raised her tablet. Any destruction after this notice activates immediate suspension under Section 12. Gavin stopped. Outside, dawn touched the chrome of 100 motorcycles until the parking lot flashed with cold points of light. Inside, the pie warmer cast a soft red glow over the invoices that could no longer be hidden. This is harassment, Gavin said. Everett placed his empty cup on its saucer. No one has followed you. You brought a crowd to frighten me. They brought records. The fear is yours. Gavin looked through the glass. Every biker remained beside his machine. Some held folded documents. Others held paper cups purchased from the diner. None approached the office. None gave him the confrontation he needed. The operations director extended her hand. The ledger. Gavin opened the lower cabinet. It was empty. As I said, misplaced. Holly took one step toward the linen shelves. Her face had gone pale, but her voice stayed clear. He moved it after the December audit. Gavin closed the cabinet harder than necessary. You do not know what you're talking about. Holly reached behind 3 unopened boxes of white napkins and pulled forward a long black register wrapped in a plastic bread bag. The book was ugly, greasy, and swollen with carbon sheets. She carried it to the counter. Gavin did not try to stop her. At 7:02, the operations director opened the first page. Vehicle descriptions, referral codes, priority surcharges. Beside every R18 entry was the same. Notation, 18% facility rebate. Beside several entries were the initials GP. The sequence ran without interruption from 6812 to 6894. June saw her own handwriting nowhere in the book, yet her $20 decision had brought the missing copy back to the same counter. Gavin stepped out of the office. Those figures require context, he said. Mason placed the vendor agreement beside the ledger. Everett placed the pink copy beside the agreement. June placed the yellow copy beside his. The operations director aligned all 4 items with the edge of the counter. The context is complete. Gavin looked toward the bikers one final time. Their stillness offered him nothing to fight, nothing to accuse, and nowhere to hide. At 7:05, he unclipped the brass management badge from his shirt pocket. His fingers trembled once. He set it beside the register. The silence held. Even the coffee maker sounded too loud. The only sound came from the coffee maker beginning another cycle. At 7:08 a.m., the operations director closed the black ledger and placed her palm over it. Gavin stood behind the spotless counter with his management badge beside his hand, surrounded not by angry men, but by documents he could not explain away. The sealed envelopes remained unopened. That was Everett's final advantage. You can send those anywhere you want, Gavin said, but his voice had lost its certainty. Everett looked toward the ceiling camera, then toward the clear fire lane outside. We already proved no one threatened you, blocked the road, or entered without paying. Mason slid the vendor agreement beside the ledger. Holly placed her handwritten notebook on top. June aligned the yellow carbon copy with Everett's pink one. 3 witnesses. For records. 1 uninterrupted transaction sequence. Gavin looked toward the 100 motorcycles as though hoping one rider would shout, step forward, or give him a reason to change the story. No one did. The bikers simply waited beneath the morning light, their scarred faces calm, their engines cold, their receipts still folded in their hands. Everett spoke quietly. You built this arrangement on stranded people being alone. Gavin said nothing. She was alone too. Everett continued, nodding toward June. You thought that made her easy to control. The operations director opened the first sealed envelope. Inside were copies of the invoices, the transfer summary, and the vendor rules. Your access to the resort payment system is suspended effective now, she said. The roadside contract will be reviewed, every disputed charge will be traced, and all diner employment deductions will be audited. Gavin reached for the ledger. She pulled it beyond his fingertips. Do not touch the record. Gavin's hand stopped inches from the ledger. He could not destroy the evidence without confirming intent. He could not accuse the bikers of intimidation because the camera showed their restraint. He could not blame the tow company because the ledger carried his initials. He could not punish June because the altered schedule and Holly's testimony had already placed his retaliation under formal review at 7:12. Gavin removed the office keys from his belt and placed them beside the badge. The sound was small. It carried through the entire diner. Outside, Everett raised 2 fingers, and the riders remained beside their motorcycles. Over the next 3 hours, those with disputed charges entered 4 at a time, signed formal statements, settled their checks, and returned to the lot. Only after the last statement was logged did the 100 engines start. Coffee, hot food, and cold mountain air moved through the opening door. June worked the counter by choice, not command. When Everett finished his second cup, he unfolded her order slip and placed the $20 bill beside it. "You never spend it," she said. "It was not mine to spend. I told you to help the next person. That is what we are doing." 3 weeks later, a metal box appeared beside the diner entrance. It had been built from an old motorcycle tool case, sanded smooth and bolted into the stone wall. A clear panel covered the front. Inside were prepaid fuel cards, emergency gloves, charging cables, a list of approved roadside services, and a small cash compartment labeled Traveler Fund. Beneath the glass, permanently sealed into the base, lay June's $20 bill and the oil-marked order slip that read, "Use this to get off the mountain." The metal box changed what the diner represented to everyone who crossed the pass. Roadside prices were posted openly. Employees kept every cent of their tips. No single towing company controlled referrals from the diner. June's shifts were restored, and her withheld money was returned. 3 months later, after completing Aldercrest supervisor training, she accepted the night shift lead position only after securing written protections for every worker on the schedule. Months later, a stranded traveler opened the metal box before dawn and took a fuel card. He never learned why one worn $20 bill had been preserved beneath the glass. June watched from inside as he drove safely down the mountain. Then she turned the sign from closed to open. On the Traveler Fund's first anniversary, Everett and a small line of riders passed the diner at sunrise without stopping, leaving behind no damage, no threats, and one permanent reminder that kindness becomes powerful when good people refuse to let it stand alone. If you believe in the true brotherhood and kindness of bikers, please hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel for more stories. This story is a fictional narrative created for entertainment, reflection, and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real people, places, or events is purely coincidental.